And we have that you made the effort, and really thank you to all of you. It's a pleasure to see you. I think looking at you, you're happy to be here. Are you happy, Len? Yes. Voilà. And I mean it. So difficult those days to discuss reasonably, civilly, with civility, rationally, with facts, with curiosity. Harinder, curiosity, openness, capacity to change our opinions. I'll come back to that. So once again, thanks, really our heartfelt thanks from the Policy Center for the New South for you to take the time to come to us in this annual gathering. Thanks to my colleagues at the Policy Center and all the supporters of what we do. We're very proud also to have the high patronage of His Majesty King Mohammed VI for this edition, as we had for the past couple of editions, and we're also very glad that we fit in the vision of the Atlantic he has described and conceptualized in the discourse last November. An Africa-Atlantic cooperating for better economic, social outcomes for the region, a region with no conflictuality, a few things here and there, but generally no conflictuality compared to other regions of the world. So we're very proud of that, and we feel it as an encouragement. A few words about the Policy Center. That's the thing when you get older and you have not moved to progressive lenses yet. You resist. You know, like policymaker, they resist change, you know. I'm not sick, I don't need pills, you know. I see well. Well, you don't see well anymore, Karim. So a few words about the Policy Center. The Policy Center is going to turn 10 years next year. And, you know, I think we've very proudly created a culture. Today it's 110 people, 70 researchers, 15 nationalities, a variety in ages, demographic heterogeneity, but space for everybody, which is very important. So there is a very nice alchemy taking place between older fellows, Sibassou, you're still young, but you know, with our younger staff, and it's producing results and outcome. We became a talent factory. Every year, 5 or 6 young staff of the Policy Center move on to new adventures at the IMF, at JP Morgan, at the UN, in various development agencies around the world, in the civil service in Morocco. And we take lots of pride into that. Very special skills that you also have at the intersection of civil society, academia, and policy making. When you're a young economist, you know, 24, 25, getting out, or a young international relations specialist, and you have the chance to interact with ministers, former ministers, with Hindin, great economist, Walalou, former minister, former ambassador, Mr. Lulishki, or all of you here, you see our kids. Welcome, Ambassador Hilal. You improve, you progress exponentially. It works. I'm saying this because we need a method to make progress. And I think part of what we're doing it at the Policy Center is to try to develop a method. Part of this method is the gathering we're having. You were not invited by accident. I want to do business with you. You know that, the Atlantic Center in Portugal. We have stuff to do together. This is for us part of a research program. We publish tens and tens of papers every year. We do many events on the Atlantic. We believe in this idea. Of course, it's tough to impact the real world. It's tough to impact policies, but at some point, you have lots of officials here. They will listen. They don't listen, so force, because it's difficult what we're asking for. We hate change as human beings. But I think we are at a critical juncture. Not only in this region, I think we are blessed in a way, but generally, locking effects, path dependency, critical junctures, high hysteresis effects. There is the feeling, and we will listen to all of you during these 3 days. There is the feeling that we are at a time, and we're very glad to have highly experienced former heads of states or colleagues and friends in positions to share with us the challenges of policy making in this current environment, where it's very difficult to listen to each other, and it's very difficult to change stance. So I'm very interested in the method. It doesn't happen by accident. It needs to be grounded, organized, structured. And I think we don't have the decision-making process in public policy making. It's a bit better in companies, but we don't have the right fabric for public policies, being in international affairs, being in addressing domestic reforms in education and health, to sort of adapt constantly and draw the benefits of, the best of the brains we have in our nations, or the best of technology. And it's something we have a passion for, and something that we translate from the Policy Center to the Mohammed VI Polytechnic Universities, with many of our researchers are teaching, and some of you also are associated with us. So I believe it needs to be organized. So if you have ideas, if you want to work together, we are really very open for this kind of idea, and we know it's tough. We're not naive, but we believe in good intentions. We believe also that we can't outsmart life. The Policy Center has created its own culture. You can't be so smart that you think in your corner you can imagine tactics, and when everybody is telling you you're wrong, you need to listen at some point, to surround yourself with smart people. You imagine the brain power that is gathered here. We can do amazing stuff. We're here as a community, but we all have multiple attachments. It's distributed network, very powerful, but so difficult to engineer and organize with one single objective. I may sound a little bit crazy, but this is the mission that we impose to ourselves, we give to ourselves at the Policy Center. That's not only about conferences, publishing, etc. We want to go the extra mile. So think through this, and we'll have a sort of, post-mortem at the end. And within this, trust is fundamental. And I see the kind of things we do together as a trust protocol, as a mechanism of underwriting ideas that you will carry with you in your countries. That we have tended to underestimate the powers of ideas. And this is why good or bad sort of mood, we all as human beings, nations, the world, we're moody. There's a mood, no, Isabel? There's a general mood. It affects your daily life, what's happening in the world. So we are sensitive human beings, and these are emotions. Think tanks and other institutions are here to separate emotions from to rationality, because to do stuff together, its method, its rationality, is the coldness of the brain, not the willpower of energy, although we need that power. The power, the energy, the willpower is with the younger generation. And they are here. Can you stand up, please, our emerging leaders? I hope they are here. They're not here, see? Anyway. So they are, voilà, un peu de courage, levez les mains. There are 40 of them, and we have a community now of 420 of them. Some have been very successful, kept in the relations, and we've been doing stuff with them. That's what our interest is to continue to do things to make a difference. This is happening in a context, I said a few words already about that, a tough context, multipolar competition, democracies being challenged, of course, wars, you have all in your mind, those consequences, those two wars, technology, what we're going to do with AI, immense challenges in the labor market, academic institutions as well, degrees as being sort of challenge as a signal, all of this. And the only response is really to get together and to use trust we've been building together, to use our brain power, which is an immense asset, to provide responses, not necessarily collective responses, but ideas, reflections from our own standpoints, but that have the same sort of philosophy, objective, and intention to, around values we share, like, dialogue, tolerance, which I think Morocco epitomizes a country of reasonable government, an old place, grounded with roots, with the wise view of the world, with the long experience of what is it to be in the world, of its place in the world. Other countries would respond to this description. There are not many, and this is what I would qualify the New South, which I think we coined years ago, which is very relevant today. This New South, which is not ideological, which doesn't define itself as anti, as against, but that claim its place in the world, a reasonable place, commensurate with what it is, what it can bring to the world. And this is this New South, friends from the North. We want you to understand and look at very carefully. Take the time to zoom in, to understand, rather than just rejecting. A bit cynically sometimes, I'm seeing papers around against. We will give them a lesson at some point in time of these guys in the New South. If they think they're getting freer, they're challenging us. That is the worst that can happen. And this platform is unique. It's a balanced demography from the south, the north. You are about 440, including the working press, excluding Moroccan press, which are all Moroccans. We are 480 nationalities, and I won't give the number for gender balance, but we're getting better. Ladies, we need your support. We're trying, but don't worry, it's gonna change. At the university, 75% of graduate students are girls. So it's changing. You won. It's over. But this is quite unique from Latin America, Africa, the 4 continents of the Atlantic, but also some other places in Asia, and we're very glad that they are with us, as they share also the same kind of challenges and would have to provide responses to those challenges. This is why, and if I may conclude on that, a piece of advice, that's not my advice, of course, that's what comes from the soup we create at the Policy Center, mixing people coming from various angles, ambassador, ministers, security people, economists, naive philosopher, etc. Sink in. We've created here a safe space. You have 3 days. Leave your mobile phone a little bit on the side. discover these great people here, this great community. Sink in, feel the vibe. This is why we do it in this space, because it's a closed space, it's a community. We want you to feel also the spirit that we try to convey, as we don't do much without what we call in Arabic a ruh, which is a breath from inside, a small sacred fire that is burning. And I think we owe it, don't like this word, but the next generation. And I'll conclude on that. I was in a very important conference in Europe. I don't want to name it. There was a panel of young leaders in their 30s in Europe. And they were asking for more space. They were complaining about older people not giving them space. Really, I was shocked. Europe, they have subsidized free universities, etc. And they were quite successful people, but that's not enough. They want purpose, they want to have an impact on this world, and we should be mindful in public policies to give them space, voice, allow impact. It doesn't happen by just saying it. Again, we're back to the method. The method is to do stuff together as think tanks, as academic institutions, as also policymaker, bringing in as advisory group, interacting with think tanks, with research institutes, etc., where people have the time to do the stuff we do. I mean, that's why we were created. If we were here to mimic the agendas of ministers and policymakers, we would be useless as think tanks. I mean, if you ask me if I'm busy, I'm not busy. If I was too busy, I wouldn't do my job. And the same goes for the team at the Policy Center. Let me close here. They're starting to get nervous there. So once again, enjoy the conference. This is your conference. It belongs to you. We're just creating the space, and it is what we will do with it all together. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the stage Nik Gowing for an introductory town hall.
Thank you, Karim. Thank you, Karim. My job is to make sure that we do exactly what Karim has just said. Your conference, this conference belongs to you. So for the next 45 minutes, we're turning this into a town hall. There's no one sitting there in a chair to talk to you. You're going to be talking to each other. And I want to hear ideas from you, big ideas. I'm here because since I left the BBC, where I was working until 10 years ago, I've been running a project called Thinking the Unthinkable. Thinking the Unthinkable, or Thinking the Unpalatable. We predicted Brexit, we predicted Trump, we warned about a pandemic, and we could see what was happening with the climate emergency. Most people thought we were nuts. Look where we are now. I'm going to encourage you, and I'm going to talk for 2 minutes so you can begin to think, because there are microphones out there which will grab ideas from you immediately. I want you to think about how you can be bold, you can be radical, and you can be radical about the Atlantic Basin. This is not about having 2 days of conference talking to you about ideas which have been put together by a steering committee. This is where you can help change and modify and speed the agenda. And I've been talking now for a minute, so I've got another minute to go. But I want you to think about this being a takeoff, not tomorrow or on Saturday, but now. And I'll be really disappointed if I don't hear a lot of good ideas. I'm not asking for speeches. I'm asking for experiences, particularly from the emerging leaders as well, and their perspective, and the mixture of experience in this room and those who are struggling to see things in a different way. Look at what happened in Dubai literally only yesterday. The speed at which things happened, things moved forward in a way which wasn't predicted literally 24 hours earlier. I was there. It was a pretty miserable atmosphere. but at least there was an acceptance yesterday of a transition to the end of fossil fuels. Would you have been predicting that a week or two ago? Look at the speed at which things are happening and how they are happening. There is a danger of a prescribed agenda. So I want you to try and break out of that in the next 40 minutes, to put on the agenda, to put on into our thinking the kind of different way we can approach things, how we redefine the Atlantic Basin, how we redefine the jobs we are doing, who's going to be doing those jobs in future, who's got brave perspectives, and looking at the constraints as well that there are. So I'm really very much picking up what Karim has been saying, and that's why when we started talking about this a couple of months ago, I said, look, if you'd like me to come, I'll do it as a town hall, because I think actually you're going to have a lot of hundreds of ideas which can flow forward and then coalesce and come together in a new kind of spirit. So as Karim said, this is a safe space. Put your mobile phones away, even unless you want to actually send us a message. It is about being radical, and I've already spoken to a couple of people just to get the tone of it going. And our first, literally, is down here from Buenos Aires, from Argentina. Camilla, welcome. I've chose you at this stage, and I said, and we only met 10 minutes ago, I said, because of what you've been going through in Argentina. You were a member of parliament until a few weeks ago. Now you're not. Look what's happened. What are you seeing? What have you discovered about the need to be radical?
So, hi everyone, I'm from Argentina. We just got a new president starting Sunday, and I was an MP until Sunday too. And he won, Milei. He's a libertarian. He calls himself an anarcho-capitalist. And he's been growing in the past 6 years, but no one thought he was going to win, except for young people. Young people were at his base. So I'm starting to think, I've been in politics for over 12 years, ever since I was 22 years old. And I'm starting to think that being a leader today is less about knowing the obvious and more about feeling the unpredictable. You know, Giorgio Agamben said that being contemporary is about being inactual. Well, that was Nietzsche, but Giorgio Agamben brought it back. Being contemporary is being inactual. Somehow we have to disrupt the present because it's so unexpected to Argentina to have a president that's anarcho-capitalist. And also, people got so tired with traditional politics, which, well, I am now a part of, although I'm young, and young people started saying, so are traditions and institutions and rules more important than our needs? So I don't have the answers to that. I'm just going to put that on the table because our democracy is, in a way, shaking because we're not getting to where we want to be, and very, very fast new phenomena are arising.
And how much did a chainsaw actually play a part in this election, in crystallizing the rift valley that there was in Argentinian politics?
So for all those who haven't seen it, the actual president, he was carrying a chainsaw around. That's called la motosierra. So his plan was to basically cut off spending, the state, people who are not working, public spending, a lot of social services. And that's really one of the reasons why he won, because people thought we cannot be worse off than we are now. We've had a high inflation rate. We're at a 150% inflation rate a year. So people were like, so no one's solving this. Let's give our chance to this chainsaw new guy who comes out of nowhere, rather than give it to someone who's been out there for a long time and has experience. So that's quite something for Argentina.
Two big takeaways here. No one thought it would go this way. Tired of traditional politics. Let's leave it there, and I'm going to go to the other end, and I don't have a long list of people who said they want to talk, so I'm going to come to you, microphones and all, and if you can put up a bit of paper or something to grab my attention, then that's a good start. Let's go to Marianne Albuquerque from Brazil. Welcome.
Hi, Nick. Welcome.
What is your experience? What is your big idea?
Well, my big idea is that I'm very proud that Brazil is back to the international stage, back to Africa, back to look at the world as a collectivity and not as only a national country. And my big idea, considering that we are in the Atlantic dialogue and talking about the Atlantic Basin, is that we have to relaunch the ZOPACAS, which is the Zone of Peace and Cooperation in the South Atlantic. We in South America have a nuclear free area of nuclear weapons. In Africa, you do it too. So basically, we have the biggest non-nuclear weapon area in the world if we combine our two regions. So we should start to look at the Atlantic as a bridge and not only as an ocean, and rebuild and relaunch this partnership that has been going on for decades but is very underutilized.
It's just about a year since the big change took place politically in your country. How has politics changed? What has been the national mood as a result?
The national mood is that the previous presidency didn't look at international relations as a priority, so Brazilian foreign policy was pretty much focused on very specific partners, especially in the global north. So now we have an African policy again back in our strategies. We have more connections with South America and the Latin American countries. So the change is that Brazil is now not looking only to the obvious partners, but also trying to diversify our economy, our partnerships, and be part of the change and not just a passive spectator.
Thank you very much. Right, it's open house, open season. Who's got ideas here who'd like to put them on the agenda of what is happening in your area, where you're working, the kind of responsibilities that you've got? Please, hands up. A hand, one finger, one piece of paper. Yes, please. And who'd like to come in next? Because I'll get the microphone to them. Someone else has put up their hand somewhere? Here. Yeah, I'll come to you next. Right.
So my 3 points are this. One, what each country
Just tell us who you are.
Marcus Freitas from Brazil. My 3 points are the following. First of all, how can each country find a disruptive technology that will allow them to find the next stage of development and growth? Second, we really need to redefine what we understand as democracy, and perhaps it's time to evaluate all the 3 powers that we had in the past. We need to rethink about this model that has been created by Montesquieu so that we start having merit and not only charisma getting elected. So that's the second point. And the third point is that we should not build a wall between East and West. That's the great challenge that we have, this situation that we see in the world nowadays, in which we're trying to split even the world between East and West, and this is not going nowhere.
Are you asking the question, who wants to be a politician these days?
Yes.
Any politicians in here? Please answer. Right, let's take the microphone further back.
Hello, Landry Signé, Policy Center for the New South. So the key point related to the conversation is about the velocity brought by the emergence of technology, but also the evolution, the unpredictable evolution of political situation, war, we had the pandemic, among other. So how to bridge the gap between the velocity of those trends and the ability of policymaker to manage those changes, knowing that the policy-making process is much slower than the ability either of the corporation to innovate or than the challenges which are evolving at an incredible pace, changing priority from one to another.
Thank you very much indeed. Please.
Hi, thank you very much. I'm Gustavo Carvalho from the South African Institute of International Affairs. The one thing that I think it's important, and I was hearing the colleague from Brazil talking about the South Atlantic zone, I think it's important for us to harmonize what do we see and know as the Atlantic itself. I'm originally from Brazil, having been in South Africa for the last 17, 18 years, and those concepts certainly are different depending on where we are, in terms of the importance of cooperation, in terms of the importance of policies, in terms of the points. When I look into the South Atlantic concept, it often feels like the very Brazilian concepts that some African states are okay with sometimes. Sometimes it feels to me, being based in Africa, that going to South America, my region of origin, it's way further than it is for me to go to Europe, because often the connections that we have, the engagements that we have, are still very much north-south and east-west.
So the big takeaway is for you?
But the big takeaway for me is that we need to rethink concepts, ideas, in order to make them usable on a local and national basis.
Is that happening?
I don't think so.
All right, that's a challenge for this conference. Please, at the back.
Yes, Mehmet Ögütçü.
It'll work.
Chairman of London Energy Club, originally from Turkey. I have 2 question marks and comments on the thinking unthinkable from your perspective. One is Now we have so many cleavages around the world. In the past, it was more ideological during the Cold War. Then we have economic cleavages, social, ethnical, religious, as Huntington predicted in his Clash of Civilizations. I think these cleavages will be deepening over the next decades to come. How we can bridge the gaps, I think, is a big question that we have to understand. And between the West and the rest, I think there will be more and more tension, including with China. So how we are going to address it, I think, is something we have to keep in mind all the time. The second thing you mentioned about Dubai, COP28, I'm not that optimistic, because if you read only the communique, of course it looks positive, but deep down it comes down to all the financing, especially for the developing and undeveloped, least developed world. And we haven't made much progress on that. We have to live also with fossil fuels for a long time to come, as they account for almost 83% of the energy consumption. So there are no easy solutions, black and white. So this is other issue, how we can strike the balance. And the last but not least is about the autocratic regimes, authoritarian regimes. They are on the increase around the world. They are not going to be less and less, because democracy is not functioning, is not responding to the aspirations of the people. How to find the right balance between autocracy and democracy.
Let me challenge you on that point.
Go ahead.
They're not voted for, but actually they are often as a result of a free election. What's happened in Hungary, what's happened in Italy, what's happening in many countries, including in Argentina, the swing that happened there, it was as a result of a free vote. People could choose, but it's becoming more radical in the responses and the results.
That's what I'm saying as well.
Be careful about just saying it's becoming autocratic. It's a result of democracy. Let me pick up here, and could you pass to the lady in front of you? The lady in front of you. Thank you very much, please.
Yeah, I can easily, my name is Klaus Leisinger, I'm coming from Germany. I can easily pick up on that. The question is, if we look at climate change, if we look at migration, if we look at disruptive technologies like artificial intelligence, the question is, can we solve these problems with democratic means?
And your answer?
I'm not so sure, because you're quite right. At the moment, let's talk about climate change only. Climate change today means that people have to pay out of national budgets for an impact that is international and elsewhere. And that is not easily explainable, first. Secondly, in the past, we always discussed as if ecological and social objectives are in harmony, and they are not. We pay a social price for ecological investments, and we are not talking about it. Third point, some of the problems we have, might be solved with new technologies, if and when the terms of of intellectual properties are changed, because it doesn't make sense if something is invented in Germany and too expensive to be applied in the global south. So my point is, let's also talk about how can we improve communication about complex, interrelated problems that put a burden on today's generation for the benefit of future generations.
Thank you very much indeed. An enormous number of hands have gone up. That's great. Be patient. I've got 30 minutes to run. For the moment, let's just move the microphone to the lady there. You've got the microphone, haven't you?
Thank you.
And do introduce yourself.
Mina Baliamun, the Policy Center for the New South. And what I have to say is linked actually to the three previous intervenants. First, we hear lots of talk today. We heard it today, but we hear it around that countries want to have free trade with Africa all of a sudden, as if Africa, they just developed Africa now, or they just discovered it. The problem is that if we're looking at the countries in Africa that are on the Atlantic seaboard, if we develop lots of things with them, what's going to happen to the rest of Africa, right? And this, I think it was mentioned this morning also. We have to, if we do that, we have to make sure that the plan includes all of Africa, even the countries that are not on the Atlantic. Because we are going to have, there is a danger that we're going to leave out lots of countries and lots of population within the continent. So we're going to have like the seaboard that's more or less developed, and then everybody else is going to regress.
I think we've got the message. Let's
now,
leave
the
it.
second thing has to do with fossil fuels and green energy and those things. And yes, you are right. African countries or even poor countries around the world are asked to do this while they are not, they don't have the means, right? They don't have tax revenues. They're not even good at, many of them are not good at tax mobilization or revenue mobilization. And we're asking them to do it. More than this. And linked to free trade also. What sort of free trade with Africa? Taking the raw materials and then sending to the Africa finished products that are multiples and multiples and multiples of the price. I think really we have to sit down and think about these things. Now with fossil fuels, there are many countries in Africa that rely on oil exports. What facilities are they going to be given to do the transition? That also has to be put on the plans.
What we can't do is negotiate here in this 45 minutes, but we can put it on the agenda. So thank you for that. Please, the lady over there with the microphone.
Thank you.
Would you like to stand up?
Thank you. So,
and you are?
Oh, sorry. Erica Moines, former Minister of Foreign Affairs with the Atlantic Council from Panama.
And you spoke this morning.
I spoke this morning.
Talking about the limits for politicians.
Yes, thank you.
I was looking for you because I wanted to take you up on that.
Thank you. So I have a disruptive idea. I think we tend to shy away from conflict sometimes when we look to ally ourselves. There is a serious conflict happening now that has brought all of our attentions actually to within the Atlantic countries, particularly within Africa and Latin America, we're 90 countries. We have so much power in the diplomatic arena. So thinking about ways where we could mobilize ourselves rather than waiting for it to get a line from other countries, to align ourselves and to focus in looking for ways to bring peace. It's an interesting idea that issue-oriented rather than value-based, we mobilize ourselves, we try to put pressure in actually getting to peace in the conflicts that are happening right now.
And just before you sit down, can you just repeat the point you made towards the end of the session? Not everyone was there this morning.
Yes.
Particularly about solutions and how they are politically operable, how politicians or the political class can pick them up or not, is the way I understood it.
Yes, so sometimes it's difficult to think we're gonna ally ourselves regardless of whether we share values or not, for instance, on democracy, because politicians need to go back to their constituents and sell those agreements. And it is really hard, and this is why it's interesting in thinking always hard, how do you implement policy that we get out of here, of the think tanks, into actual action? And that has to be something that you can sell to your constituency.
That's a really important challenge for these 2 days. Please, could you push the microphone forward? Who's got it over there, please? And then we'll move it towards you.
Rabia Muhtar, the Senior Fellow at the Policy Center for the New South. The current business model had failed us. If you look at climate change, if you look at pollution, if you look at the poverty globally, if you look at the lack of progress in the Sustainable Development Goals, and we're halfway through the journey, that business model that has been with us for many, many years has failed us. We need a new business model that will be based on values, that is based on sustainability values, that may not be only financial, that looks into social equity, that looks into system that's more sustainable. When are we going to transition into that system?
Let me tell you that was very much underscored everywhere in Dubai and in advance of Dubai. The fact that the current model doesn't produce the solutions that we need to actually prevent us all frying. So it's very much on the agenda. And certainly new research produced in Dubai last week made it very clear that we're passing tipping points. They are irreversible. And
we know what needs to be done.
You know what needs to be done.
We know what needs to be done. When are we going to mobilize the action plan to do that? We know what needs to be done.
Good question. Important question. When are we going to mobilize, please?
Thank you very much. My name is Zahid. I am former ambassador, and I have an experience in the multilateral cooperation and negotiations. And my question is, how can we build a fair partnership between different countries of bordering the Atlantic to face the challenges, the many challenges, and I'm not going to say in democracy, environment, economy, and so on. How can we do this? Because the differences are huge, and the need for cooperation is evident for everyone. So how can we think about developing fair partnership between these countries? Is it possible? Yes. How to do it is another problem. Thank you.
Okay, pass the microphone back to the lady behind you. I'll come to you in a moment. Who's got the microphone over here?
Merci.
Non, un instant, s'il vous plaît.
D'accord.
Thank you. Nick from the George Washington University in Washington, D.C. I come out of a very large conference right there in artificial intelligence, and another one happened in the UK a little while ago. I want to put on the table that this is a disruptive technology. It's going to amplify inequalities between nations, inequalities within nations, and something has to be done internationally. It cannot be regulated nationally. Is going to be really disruptive and amplifying the problems that we already have in the world.
Pass the microphone back, can you, to the lady with the bit of paper. I think I need to warn Karim that this conference needs to be extended to 7 days at the moment.
I'll sign up for that, for the 7 days. Hi, my name is Khadija. I was born and I grew up in Belgium. My grandparents come from Morocco. I am one of the emerging leaders with the AD, with the Atlantic Dialogue Program at OCP. I wanted to jump back, since we're all talking about cooperation here, and having worked at the United Nations previously, the question for us here is, how can we reduce the reliance in funding international development programs and projects that so far have been relying on northern funding, even when there is a pool of funding. Most contributing countries are basically from the global north. So what funding mechanisms can we put in place between countries in the Atlantic and all across the global south to fund our own development program and hence become a bit more independent? Thank you.
And funding is going to be the core issue at COP29 in Azerbaijan next year. Please.
Can't wait.
You may have to. It's another 52 weeks away. I'll come to you in a moment. The lady here, please. Vous avez le micro.
Merci.
Thank you. On behalf of diversity, I'm going to speak in French. I'm an economist, Moroccan economist, and throughout my career, I have navigated between action and reflection. Everyone agrees and concurs to say that the globalization is certainly coming down. We're talking about deglobalization, fragmentation, but the digital space, the cyber space, is now extending, stretching everywhere from the very bottoms of the seas to the satellite cables, etc. How should we think of this very question? How should we think about this question that certainly is affecting the sovereignty of the states? Is it thinking the unthinkable? Can we say that? Yes.
Yeah. The lady who's got the mic. There are two ladies with microphones.
Oh, sorry. You can get up.
You can speak in stereo if you want.
Okay.
Please, the lady right at the back first.
Thank you so much. And it's following on from the conversation about funding. My name is Nchumunya Hamukoma, and I'm part of the Emerging Leaders cohort from 2018. I work in the field of philanthropy as well with the Global Energy Alliance for People and Planet. And my question is, how do we move from the place where we're looking at the appearance of impact as opposed to actual impact, particularly from a funding perspective, because there seems to be quite a huge divergence between the people on the ground who are doing intensive amounts of work and what we value in the sort of broader philanthropic and donor communities. And so that's my question.
Thank you very much. Would you pass the microphone forward to the other lady?
I have one.
You have one, okay.
Yeah. So I'm Clara from Germany. I was going to do my question in German, but I think it's easier that way. I was wondering, I mean, we're having crises all over the world at the moment, in Europe as well, and how does the Atlantic Basin take its chance with Europe seeking new reliable partners without actually, at the moment, having a common vision?
A new chance for the Atlantic Basin. Thank you very much. It's good in English, French, or German, so thank you. Right, you've got the microphone, I hope? No. Okay, you have the microphone.
Ettore Greco from the Institute of International Affairs in Italy. You said that sometimes it happens, really does, that free election help autocratic forces to come to power. But the case of Italy is not among those cases. I would like to emphasize this point. We don't have an autocratic regimes. I haven't voted for any of the parties now in power. I'm also against some of their policies, but it's important to stress, the point I would like to emphasize, that we need to perhaps apply more rigorous criteria to assess the nature of the domestic regimes, because it is particularly important to then see if it is possible to advance cooperation with them. Second point, it's important to discuss how it is possible, to what extent, reconcile different identities. And this applies in particular to this effort we are making to try to define the Atlantic identity. This was the very subject of the first session. At the same time, we are also interested as Europeans in particular to understand if the African identity, which is also promoted through specific initiative and structure and institutions, is advancing, what are its characteristics, and it's a general problem we have. How those identities can be reconciled and promoted, possibly also at the same time, what does implies in Cochrane terms.
Thank you very much. We have 15 minutes left. How many other people would like to speak and contribute? You can work out the arithmetic, so remain as constrained as you are, even if you're being very sharp about what you're saying, then we can hear as many ideas as possible. And I'm going to issue a challenge. I'm going to come to, I can see where all the hands are at the moment. I'm going to issue a challenge. If anyone feels, or two of you feel, at the end of this, I can see one really big direction of travel, which this conference should be looking at as well. I'd like to hear from you. And don't use that as a way of smuggling in some new ideas. Please, first of all, the gentleman there. The gentleman behind. Do you want to speak as well? Good, okay.
Thank you. I'm Jean-Louis Sarbib. I live in the United States. And I think that it's great to hear so many voices talk about the variety of values, the variety of approaches. My concern, which has been increasing over the last couple of years, is that the concept of truth is being very much damaged. And facts are no longer a basis on which we can exchange values. So my concern is that we live in a world which people can create their own facts to justify. And yes, you're right that some of the more authoritarian regimes have been elected, but have been elected on the basis of which facts? And I think, to me, if we try to find ways of getting facts that we can build on in the age of social media, in the age of artificial intelligence, I think we would have made some progress.
Thank you. About knowing whether a fact really is a fact or a fake fact. It's interesting, my former employer, the BBC, now has a department which is called BBC Verify, and stuff doesn't get put on air until it's been verified, whether it be pictures, whether it be WhatsApps, whatever. It's remarkable. It's very time-consuming. I'm now going to come to the cluster over there, which is putting its hands up. Who's got the microphone first?
Yes, good afternoon. First of all, my name is Dr. Serigne Diop. I'm a former minister in Senegal. And I would like, first of all, to congratulate Morocco for having this dialogue here. The voice of Africa is important and it has to be heard. I would like just to raise two issues. One is the Sahelian situation, Mali, Niger, and Burkina Faso, with Al-Qaeda issues and the political turmoil. I think this is important. We cannot talk about the world without Africa. And this is really very important for this African voice to be heard. And the issues of terrorism is very important. But next to that issue of terrorism, we have the issue of economic development, industrialization for Africa. And I think Africa should not be only a reservoir of petrol, gas, raw material, and so on. We need to find a way to do processing, industrial development, manufacturing. It means that Morocco and the Sahelian countries need to work more together now with the external world, like Atlantic countries and so on. So it's not only about North and South, it's also about West and East.
There are plenty of sessions addressing, I think, what you put on the agenda. But remember that word which came out from the word cloud. Boldness was replaced by collaboration.
Yes.
So that among an unscientific representation here. Now, who else wants the microphone?
Yeah.
Sitting where you are? No one. Oh, behind you, over your left shoulder. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Jens. I'm from Belgium, and I'm also part of the Emerging Leaders Program. And I don't want to bring anything new to the agenda, but I just wanted to stress...
Why not?
Well, I'm 27 years old. I'm in my mid-20s. And I just wanted to say that whenever we talk about climate change, we're not just talking about business, we're not just talking about the numbers, right? We're talking about your children, your grandchildren, my grandchildren as well, who will suffer because of climate change. And I just wanted to stress that whenever we're talking about all of this, yes, having a comfortable life is good, economy is important, but life, I think, is more important.
Can I just finish your thought? It's not just about the climate change, it's climate emergency, existential threat, biodiversity, and the way we're abusing nature. So
exactly, that's more eloquent, but thank you.
That should be underscoring much of what we're talking about over the next 3 days. Right, Kim, have you got the microphone? Who else has got a microphone over here? Have you got a microphone? Let's get a microphone to you if you haven't got one, please, at the front. Oh, you, there, go ahead.
Nick.
I'll come to you in a moment, Kim, please.
I'm Ade Mabukunje, Stanford University, just in terms of crazy ideas.
I didn't say crazy.
What do you mean?
That's your interpretation.
Okay.
It's about being bold and radical. And
okay.
That doesn't mean being crazy.
Let's take this way around. If we increase the number of floating universities that run on green power to move people and use the Atlantic Ocean to begin to move our people back and forth so that they mix with each other. In fact, what I'm asking for is increased migration in the world, not reducing it, because the more people get to know each other, the more they begin to foster good dialogue. So I propose for the Atlantic Dialogue to hold on a cruise ship in about 3 years' time.
We're going to wait 3 years for this, are we? But migration is becoming such a divisive topic in many developed nations for reasons I don't have to explain. So it's an uphill job. Kim, I apologize.
Not at all. Kim Dozier, CNN analyst, fellow moderator. Just intervention on behalf of the gentleman talking about disinformation. There is an ongoing effort among many media outlets and some former members of the intelligence community in the States to use AI to analyze news stories, to produce reports on how factual they are. There have been various different efforts like this, but this is the first one supercharged by AI. And I think the most important thing would be, let's come up with something that everyone from all the different tribes could actually agree on, because I'm tired of people saying they don't trust the media when we're working so hard, like the BBC Verified Department, to put out truthful information.
It's worrying, though, Kim, when you and I can be replaced by AI. In other words, they buy your identity, buy your voice, and they get what they want rather than what you think is correct as a journalist.
This is true. I'm just talking about an algorithm that scans articles and
indeed.
Footnotes it with
we're only
the
in
sources.
the early stages. Move the microphone forward, then across there. Who else has got the microphone? No one over there yet? No. I'll come to the mic here. Let's get the microphone here. Please, go ahead.
Hi. I'm Yunus Mamar. I'm from Morocco, and I'm a member of the PAM, one of the party of the current Moroccan majority or coalition. My issue, or the point I wanted to share in boldness, but also in a way to be serene and decomplexed, is the following. I mean, what is interesting is that a lot of the challenges that we are facing will have or will plead for a common solution, similar to the World Cup. Remember, the complexity of the problems, or the complexity of organizing a World Cup, plead for having 3 countries, 4 countries, maybe more tomorrow, to organize events of such. This common or synergy or common solution applies for many of the challenges we have, be it energy, be it food security, be it AI, be it population. Sharing with you a quick, it took humanity 400,000 years to get to 1 billion. It took 100 years to double to 2 billion. It took 50 years to get to 4 billion, and it took 25 years to get where we are to 8 billion. So the exponential evolution of a population is something to which we can address a global solution. And so is for globally climate change. But there is one, however, challenge that we are facing all, but to which, because it has such an intimate, personal dimension, needs to be addressed by each of us, or each of those parts of the world. When I said earlier in a way that is decomplexed and assumed, is also in a way that is in respect, a relationship based on respect. In other words, in a relationship between the North and the South, the East and the West.
So can you summarize what you've said in one sentence so I can write it down?
The respect is the respects to be given, taken as not to be given. And the sixth point that I was alluding to before you gracefully interrupted me, which is the one that needs to have its personal solutions, is that of social deconstruction.
Thank you. Over there, please. Who's got a microphone over here? Please. Go ahead. You've got the microphone.
Yes, my name is Hung Tran from the Atlantic Council in Washington, D.C. I listened to 2 recent comments about facts, whether or not we can find a way to verify facts so that we have something in common, so that we can discuss and decide and vote and make intelligent decisions. I suggest that the situation is far more serious than facts or different perception of facts. Serious in the sense that many society, including the one that I live in, USA, has been fragmented into many different subgroups. Each of them live on their beliefs and not facts. They may even be aware that what they believe are not facts, but they couldn't care less, because to them, beliefs, values are more important than facts. Take the case of vaccination. There are 30, 35, 40% in almost every developed countries, US, Europe, France, Germany, who absolutely do not want vaccination. They may or may not be aware of the scientific fact about vaccination, but for religious reasons, for different reasons, they absolutely reject vaccination. And I think that is a serious problem, that if we have that fragmentation in society, how to overcome that and to have a cohesion in society is a far more challenging thing than to verify facts.
Thank you very much. Pass the microphone along the row, please.
Thank you. My name is Maged Abdelaziz, and I am an expert in UN affairs. My point is that we need to restore the lost trust in multilateral institutions, whether it is the United Nations, whether it is the World Bank, the IMF, or other institutions. It has suffered severely due to the geopolitical confrontations between the East and the West, and between the North and the South. And the results we see in the Ukraine war, the results we see in Palestine and Israel, the results we see in the food crisis, and the result we see on all other humanitarian issues that we are suffering from around the world. Thank you.
And that was very much the subject before lunch. Let me move the microphone back.
Nick, if you and I had sat down, I'm from Mexico, if you and I had sat down 2 years ago and we had looked at the word that came up in the cloud, collaboration, it's no longer valid. It's confrontation. Today, we're living in a world of confrontation. Confrontation about facts, confrontation between states, confrontation between ideologies. So I think it's important that we understand that things have changed fundamentally from 2 years ago.
Would you have said that if you were still in government?
Absolutely.
Would you have predicted it when you were in government?
No.
Why was that?
Because I'm an optimist.
As opposed to a realist?
As opposed to realist.
All right, fine, thanks very much. Please.
Nadia Motea, professor at University Mohammed V in Rabat. There is a cry of my heart as somebody in the 50s who have witnessed so many things, but lately we were talking about the COP28, we were talking about this emergency for the climate. I would talk about human values emergency. And I think what's going on in Gaza, what's going on in Ukraine, and all those crises of the world, we need to go back to our human values and be more tolerant and looking for coexistence. I think something very, very important for keeping people being optimistic about the future. Thank you.
There's plenty of new scientific work which says the climate emergency, the nature emergency, biodiversity emergency is now a threat to the stability of our societies and all we take for granted. And that's been produced scientifically, most latterly by Exeter University in the middle of last week. You have the microphone. But you will get the microphone. You're getting 2 microphones.
Thank you.
And we've got 2 minutes to run.
Okay. Adrian Thomas, energy specialist in the Caribbean. Just to just talk about the Caribbean, we struggle to get private sector investment in renewable energy projects because the islands are too small. So what tends to happen, we tend to have to be pushed by the government, although we have all the resources. So the question has to be asked is how do we make projects more attractive for the population size? And many times, similar sized projects in the Caribbean actually cost more than they would in other parts of the world. Yeah? So we have that challenge there in making or reaching our climate change targets within the region.
Thank you. Right, we've got 2 minutes to run. One hand going up there, please, from the lady. And the gentleman here. And then I put that challenge to you again. Is there a very big idea, which 1 or 2 of you have thought we need to make sure is underscoring and underpinning much of what we talk about in the next 2 days?
Hello, my name is Ala Qulqaila. I'm Egyptian and I'm a Mason Fellow in Harvard University. I think a couple of things. The first one is like, what are the tools that the policymakers need to make appropriate decisions? Like, we know that past models have failed us to plan for climate change, failed us to plan for different macroeconomic shocks. And when you talk to policymakers, you realize that they don't have the necessary tools to meet the upcoming challenges. So we'd like to think of what tools, what do they really need that are witnessing, instead of thinking of the challenges as like try to support them with the tools. And the second thing is like, what are the governance frameworks that we need in terms of having AI and blockchain and all these technologies, and how can we incorporate them in our planning?
Thank you. Let me ask a question, totally unscientific. How many of you, particularly the next generation, are desperate to become politicians? Anyone putting up their hand? One. He's got a mask on, though. I don't know what that's for. Anyone else? We've got 1 out of however many you are who wants to be a politician. I think we ought to talk about this afterwards. All right. Who else has got the microphone? The gentleman there. You've got the microphone?
Bonjour, Jalal Noordin, professor.
Good morning, Jalal Noordin. I'm a fellow professor at the governance faculty of Mohammed VI University. My question is the following. If we want to, I want to focus on a very particular phenomena, education and training. And these are 2 major components that can influence and impact socialization, both the future generations and current generation, and that might be the receptacle of a generation, including and embracing everything that we're talking about and becoming, therefore, something very structuring and bring about all those who promote the South-South dialogue. Thank you.
Len Ishmael, I'm a senior fellow at the Policy Center of the New South, former ambassador to Europe for Eastern Caribbean countries. I think there's an elephant in the room in that we're not addressing frontally. The world is really at a tipping point. Trust has been lost, east, west, north, and south. The question would be this, if we talk about the wider Atlantic, to what extent can the wider Atlantic be a template for the change that's required? A new development paradigm and a new form of engagement between North and South and East and West, where everyone is accorded dignity and respect. And that includes Russia, and that includes China, and that includes the United States, all of Africa, Latin America, and the rest of the world.
You're the first person to mention tipping points. I'd put to you that this is now crucial in so many areas, so many sectors, whether it be politics or conflict
Absolutely.
or coexistence. One final thought, please, from behind you.
Thank you very much. Captain Luís Cabral from the Atlantic Center. My idea goes to the Atlantic Basin, submarine data cables, and scientific data. If in the time frame of 5 years, how could we have a scientific database with all the data that smart cables are now collecting these days in the Atlantic, and make those scientific data available to the scientific community? Thank you very much.
There are those in that area who say there is now an amazing amount of data, an amazing amount of data. I heard
it will grow.
One senior figure from a very large company say we've got 700 billion bits of data, 700 billion. Please, one last voice here.
Hi, I'm Chipkin. I'm from South Africa. I'm talking about tipping points. The point that hasn't come up in this conversation at all, and yet I think is responsible for the tipping point, or largely, and where this crowd here has an opportunity to begin to discuss. And the question is religion. And that point from shift from collaboration to conflict is because I think over the last several years, religion in particular has taken on a greater force as a political factor in our lives. I think what's interesting about these sorts of spaces is that we don't engage religion sympathetically and critically. There are many resources within our various religions, whether it's Islam, whether it's Christianity, whether it's Judaism, to pursue or explore current issues in a way to help build collaborations in meaningful ways. So I would say one of the issues which is really opportunity for Atlantic dialogues is to put on the agenda forcefully, in a critical and humane way, the question of religion.
Religion or faith?
I would say religion, but faith is more personal. I think religion is political.
Okay, thank you. I reluctantly am going to have to bring this to a close because we've come to the end of our time. It has been an amazingly rich cornucopia of ideas, and this was only put to you literally 45 minutes ago. I've got a long list here. If I read it, it's going to take another 5 minutes. But I think what you've done is you've created an agenda which will enrich the sessions which are now going to follow. So thank you all very much indeed. I'm going to ask one more question, though. Has anyone got that big burning idea which you'd like to put on, make sure it's on the agenda so we think about it? Is this a very big idea? Yes or no? Okay. I'll tell you if it's a big idea when you've said it. You've got 1 minute only.
Matt Carlson, Sweden. We've got the facts, we've got the crisis, we've got the bad political leaders all around. What we need to do, all of us, take that collaboration word and turn it into hope. People need hope. People are desperate for hope. And only people who know truth, know science, policy methodology, politicians, businessmen, civil society, the youth, can convene it together. That was less than a minute.
And you come from a country where many will be surprised to hear there's social disintegration because of gang warfare.
Why do you think I say this?
Can I thank you all very much indeed? I don't want to bring it to an end, but I hope what it's done is made you want to sit further forward on your seat to contribute to other discussions over the next 2 days, whether they're in here or whether they're over dinner as well. So let me introduce next the follow-up from Uduak Amimo. So thank you all very much indeed. And remember what has been said here and take it and sort of put it into your DNA over the next couple of days.
Ladies and gentlemen, please remain seated. The first conversation session of the Atlantic Dialogues Conference will now begin.
In 2023, the Global South must have known the highest level of publicity in decades. Recent developments